Oh, you're live.
We're live.
We're live?
Honest to gosh.
So this is the fun of this. I'm Brad with Hagerty, obviously here with Wayne Carini, chasing classic cars. We're sitting here in Wayne's shop, and I think that ice was on the satellite and it fell, and we had to find a new satellite to get everybody to talk to. So
actually, I think it streamed through Minneapolis, and it was a little cold up there. So thanks everyone for hanging in with us.
Yeah, no kidding. That was really fun, and this is part of the excitement of this, right?
You never know what's going to happen.
You never know what's going to happen to you live. This is for our Hagerty Drivers Club members. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there.
Thank you very much.
We are going to do some great Q&A with Wayne. Wayne's going to talk to us about kind of the behind the scenes of his life and his show. And I can't think of a better way to kick this off of just saying, how did this crazy classic chasing cars thing start in the first place?
Because the Vortex will make this the abbreviated version.
Right.
It all started when I was born, I guess. My father was restoring cars. He was the founder of the Model A Restorers Club of America back in 1951, the year I was born. And I was dragged around to every car show in a stroller and a bassinet and all the things. I started working with my dad when I was about 8 years old at his shop, making about 50 cents a day. And then I moved up the ladder from there. But my passion for cars came from him. He restored cars in our family's cow barn on the family farm, and then my cousin built hot rods in a lean-to next to the barn. And then Candy Pool Sports Car Shop was a mile away up the street, and I had every type of sports car in the world and race car. So I got classic cars, hot rods, and then I got all sorts of vintage race cars and race cars of the era under my fingernails, and really got into it. Rode my bike a lot and to those different locations. But in 1961, we were on a family vacation in the Catskills, and there was a doctor that was in the cabin next to us, and he had a Ferrari that I couldn't keep my eyes off. He ended up asking me if I'd take a ride. My dad said yes, and so at 10 years old, I rode in my first Ferrari short wheelbase. And I was just over the top for Ferraris at that point. So life goes on. I own a restoration shop with my father. He retires, I take over, and we're restoring cars for people all over the country. And one day, Donald Osborne wrote an article that appeared in the New York Times about this car I pursued, a Hudson Italia. That was in a Sunday New York Times. On Monday morning, Jim Ostrowski from Essex Television called me and said, "I'd like to do a TV show about you." I thought he was insane. He came up and we sat in my office like an hour later. He got the camera out of the car, and it was 13 years ago. Chasing Classic Cars began. So it's been an unbelievable run. We're just about at 200 episodes. We're in 42 countries around the world, and it's been an unbelievable ride. I never expected it to last this long, but I've been so fortunate that it has.
How much time do you spend between the show and your restoration and sales activities here at F40?
So we're on the road a lot. I was on the road 187 days last year, and so we're trying to tone that down a little bit. I try to make sure that I'm at the shop at least 3 days a week. And up till about a year ago, I was the painter. So all of the cars that were being painted were all lined up for me as they were being prepared, and I'd come in early in the morning. I'd start painting, and I would sometimes paint 2, maybe 3 cars in a day. Fortunately, I've got a great painter now. He was my detailer, and now we've trained him to be the painter, and he's doing a fabulous job. And so I oversee projects, and I work with guys in the shop doing anything that they need me to do.
Mm-hmm. Has your business come in differently since the popularity of the show?
We get a lot of people that want to have cars restored, and we're very excited about doing a lot of different projects. But I've kept my crew small. I've not expanded it. I'm a control freak, and I want to make sure that everything is going exactly as it's supposed to. And so with the crew I have, I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable going on the road and filming and going to different car shows and leaving them behind and knowing that the jobs are being done properly and carrying on our reputation. So I like staying small.
Well, and when you say you're traveling, the show and your work, it's taking you all over the world, hasn't it?
It's taken us all over the world. We've been to Kuwait, London, Italy. I mean, so it's been a wonderful thing to go visit so many places. We'd like to expand that certainly, and hopefully we can get on the road. Hopefully we're going to go to the Mille Miglia. We'll go back to the London Brighton event that we didn't quite finish. Got 5 miles from the end, and the car finally just said that was enough. So yeah, there's a lot of things we'd love to do. I'd love to go over to Goodwood. Do the Mille Miglia, do the Goodwood Festival of Speed. There's so many things on that bucket list. People say, what happens when the bucket list is finally empty? Well, you just turn the page and you write a new bucket list, that's all.
Right. Well, we walked around before we got set up here this morning. We're in one of your storage buildings, so the cars that are kind of around us here are for sale or in storage, but you've got lots of buildings here with lots of stuff. We walked around, and you named easily 10 cars that were already queued up that were going to be at one national or international event or another this year.
Yeah, so that's part of our schedule. You know, we try to plan even 2 years in advance now because we want to make sure that the job is completed. Sometimes you're given a project in a short period of time, and so everybody's got to concentrate on that car. But we had 2 cars at Pebble Beach last year. We've got 2 going this year, 2 more next year. Then of course Amelia Island, one of my favorite shows. We've got a couple of cars going down there as well, auction cars, and so there's a lot going on, a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
We did a seminar in Scottsdale actually, where we talked about the auction market and some of the trials and tribulations that you have now with the popularity of the show. When you go to an auction, are you still looking at cars for clients and things? I mean, you're still doing those activities?
Yeah, so I have a consulting business that I consult with people about their collections. Sometimes when I consult with them, for instance, right at the moment, we have a collection of 6 cars in a collection that the person bought on their own, and we're trying to eliminate some of those and get it down to maybe 2 cars rather than all of those cars. And so we're selling some of those cars at auction, and then actually I think he's going to get a car for his birthday next week from his wife that we're adding to the collection, but with my guidance. So that's what we love doing, is helping people out, put them in the right direction so that they love their cars. You know, it's not so much about the value of the car and what its increase in value might be in the future. It's what they like and what they'll drive. A lot of people buy these cars and put them in a garage, and they only did it because, well, they see the market going up, but they really don't like it. They really don't want to drive it. They just want it to increase in value. And I think that's totally the wrong attitude. You know, you got to really, maybe you have 1 or 2 of those cars for investment purposes, but your collection should be based around what you like to drive.
Sure. Well, talk to us a little bit. I've seen cars today and in the past, you know, the Stutz, the Arnold Bristol, that are really good preservation, original type cars. When you're assessing a new car to know whether you're going to leave it alone or do a sympathetic restoration or really go full boat on it, how do you make the decision on what you're going to do with a car?
Well, you know, there's cars that are preserved, and then there's cars that are barn finds that really should be restored. So in preservation, you really want to know what the future is going to be for that car. So for instance, I had a Stutz Bearcat. We got it running and driving. It was such a thrill to be able to drive that car and leave it in the condition that we found it in. And unfortunately, I made a decision after almost being in a car accident with it that it was time to sell it, that I felt that I couldn't go out and feel the same way driving it, and we sold it at auction. But there's always something around the corner. I've got a Arnold Bristol Roadster right now that's a beautiful original car. And some people would say it needs restoration, but I like it just like it is, you know, a little dirty. It's got a top on it that's got some tears in it. But that tells the story a little bit more than just a restored car.
Well, that particular car, you told me earlier today, you knew it since you were a kid.
I did. I've known that car since probably 1970, maybe even 68, somewhere in that era where it sat in Candy Pool Sports Car Shop. And in order to get in the front door of the place, you'd have to go by and sort of squeeze between it and the cabinets in the building. And years later, it ended up at Andy Green's down in Savannah, and I ended up buying the car through Andy Green from its second owner, J.D. Egelhart, who I knew at the time that it was at Candy Pools, and I went down and talked to Andy about the car, and he said, "Well, JD wants to sell it," so I ended up buying the car 10 minutes later. And although it's been 9 years in the works, we're finally getting it running. It's really cool to be able to do that.
Well, we're looking at some of the questions we have here. So you're getting to meet a lot of people around the world, true icons in the automotive hobby. Are there still people out there that you run into that you get to talk to that you get really excited about?
Oh man, I get excited about talking to most people that are passionate about their cars, but there's been heroes of mine over the years, that I've run into. Don Gartlitz, for instance, it was a thrill to meet him, and so many icons in the automotive world that want to meet me, and that's what's weird about it. Don Perdome, for instance, and I keep going back to drag racing, but I was into that when I was a kid, more so than I am maybe now. But Don Perdome, I went up to meet him at a party reception we were at in California, and I said, "Can I shake your hand, Mr. Perdome?" He goes, "Oh my gosh, you're Wayne Carini," and he got as excited about meeting me as I was excited about meeting him. So that sort of freaks me out sometimes, but I totally get it, I guess. I mean, our TV show's so popular. It's been on for 13 years now and all over the world, so it's kind of cool.
Well, and a lot of people kind of think of you as an ambassador to the entire collector car hobby. Is that a mantle that you wanted to wear? I mean, how do you feel about that?
No, I like just being myself. I mean, it's nice. People say, I can't understand how you know so much about so many cars, and I don't really feel that I know that much about that many cars. It's just a lot of common sense. And it's sort of the analogy I give is that you're around things long enough, you learn. So, for instance, you go to the train station to pick your mother up. 500 people get off the train. How do you know which one's your mother? You just know. You've been with her long enough where you know who's your mother, and you know cars because you've hung around with them so long, and you listen to guys like my cousin built in hot rods and my dad restoring all these classic cars. And you go to Candy Pools, and when you're young, you're a sponge. You soak it all up, and there's lots of things that get you excited when you're a kid, and I was fortunate enough to have those opportunities.
Well, I can tell you guys that traveling with Wayne, which I've done a bunch over the past few years, we did Great Race together, running around, and I fed you Egg McMuffins basically every morning at 7 a.m.
Every day. I was well fed.
So you're very much still perceived, and you are a regular guy.
Oh, I am, and I don't want to be anything but me. The TV show will end someday, and I just want to go back and just be myself. And so, I wear the same blue jeans. I've probably got 6 shirts and 3 pairs of blue jeans, and that's it. I'm not a clothes horse or anything like that. I don't have big watches. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm just myself, and that's the best way to be. Be yourself, and that way it's easy to get up every morning and talk to people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go to some of the questions here that we're getting online.
Sure.
Had one more question also. If you were going to give a recommendation of a starter car for an aspiring collector or a young person getting into the hobby, what do you think would be a hot ticket these days to buy?
Just buy something that's unusual. So, for instance, and I love Camaros and I love Mustangs and I like all that stuff, buy a Pacer, buy a Gremlin, buy a Ford Pinto, buy something that's inexpensive that everybody else doesn't have. And that way you're able to draw a crowd and talk about those things. And then as you progress and you like different cars, buy what you like, and that's really the key. It doesn't matter if you're 16 or 18 years old or you're in your 60s. Buy what you like, and I think that really makes a big difference in your collecting.
Well, and we had a great question about cars from the 1930s.
Yeah.
You think of different generations of cars that are available. Some are more popular than others. What do you think of cars from the 30s right now?
30s are great. I mean, Duesenbergs and Packards, of course. I've got a 38 Lincoln I just purchased. 30s were a great era for cars. The 20s, the late 20s. So as we progressed through the 20s into the late 20s and into the 30s, they were fantastic. The war came around, and that sort of stopped production from 42 to to 46, and then it took them a while to get back and ramped up in designing new cars. Can you imagine what cars would be like maybe if we had continued and that war didn't happen? They would have progressed a lot faster over a period of time. And then, of course, the 60s are fabulous cars, 50s also, but 60s, that was a pretty special time in the automotive world, you know, with all the muscle cars and Ferraris. Everything was going so fast. And then we sort of took a break there in the 80s and into the early 90s, and now we have cars that have 840 horsepower and 1,000 horsepower right from the factory. It's a renaissance of what's been going on for years. Is the more horsepower, the better. My cousin always told me they haven't made a car that will go fast enough or has enough horsepower. Just keep that in mind, Wayne. So I've followed those rules. I think he told me that when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So I love fast cars. But then driving different cars. I just got a GT350 Mustang.
Okay.
And I love driving that car. You know, it doesn't have all the horsepower that a Demon does. I have a Demon also, but it's a different thrill of driving. Another car I'm after right now is I'd love to buy a Persang.
Oh, cool.
You know, I know I can't afford to buy a real type, 51 or 35 Bugatti. So therefore, what's the next best thing that you can enjoy that driving sensation that one of those cars brings you? So there's a lot of different reasons.
Well, there was a great article that just came out, right, about should those completely authentic blueprint to blueprint replicas be looked at in the same vein as an original car?
I don't think they looked at it in the same vein. I just think that if you love cars and you love a driving experience, that car is going to give you the same amount of passion and excitement to drive is the real thing. Now, that being said, guys that own the real thing, they get upset about it, and I don't blame them. It's fine, but don't look at it in a bad way. I mean, this is something that really sharing our experiences, and so that's what the Persang gives you, is that ability to experience that ownership and that joy of going out. I just like to buy one just so my grandson and I could go out for drives together and he could experience that same passion.
We had a question from the audience that kind of is in that vein. What's the rarest car that you've had the opportunity to be around or work on or restore?
Well, we just restored a very rare Bugatti last year, a Type 57 SC with a Van den Pla coachwork that was shown at Pebble Beach. There's many different Ferraris that we've done over the years. We were able to restore the 365P center steering car,
right?
That I saw when I was probably 12 or 13 years old in Kennedy's showroom, and then years later had the opportunity to restore it. And that car sat in our garage at our home because Mr. Kennedy didn't have any place to store it. And I used to take my two daughters out. We used to put baby car seats in each seat, and I'd drive them around the block into town every once in a while just to keep the car lubricated. So that's a pretty special car. And there's only two of them made, and it's the only one without all the spoilers. So
sure,
really cool car.
I think I saw that at the Simeon Museum also in Philadelphia.
Yes, it was down at Fred's Museum. It was there for a while. It's now in the hands. It got sold, and it's with a collector in Texas. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you've had the chance not only to be around and restore these cars, but as we're talking about driving, getting out there and doing active things. What are your favorite things to do with a vintage car?
Well, those Sunday morning drives are really good. That's the time that I get to go out and enjoy it. A lot of the times when I'm running around, I don't drive a vintage car because, I've got to have Bluetooth and talking on the phone and stuff. But Sunday mornings, sometimes in the evening, I'll take my daughter Kimberly out. So we've got the Rain Man Buick behind us here.
Right.
I had the opportunity to restore that car, and Mr. Levinson that owns the car has kept it here in storage, and he's allowed me to use it to promote autism awareness. And so that's a great car to take out for a little cruise. But each car has its purpose, and all depends on what evening it is and how you feel and what's closest to the garage door more than not. That's the car you choose is what's near the door. But I love my hot rods. I love Ferraris. I love 16 Pierce Arrow that we looked at earlier today, the American Underslung. my hot rod pickup truck, the 49 Chevy pickup truck with a 350 and air suspension. I like everything, and that's what's so cool. And I love motorcycles too. So motorcycles are a great passion that I've had over the years, and it seems to have grown over the past 5 or 10 years. So yeah, so I keep collecting those things too. I don't ride them too much anymore. I just love looking at them and looking at all the mechanical aspects of a motorcycle.
Well, a lot of people collect motorcycles because you can get a whole bunch of them in the space that only a few cars would go. We see that a good bit, and the mechanical bits and the ability to see everything.
We were in my office earlier today, and I've got, I don't know, I've got 12 motorcycles in my office. So I just enjoy looking at them. If I'm on the phone making some phone calls, it's great. It's like artwork.
So we've got a couple of questions on the hot rod front. So you go to the Quail, you go to Pebble Beach. What about a Good Guys show or a thing like? Do you like those kind of things too?
I've been to Good Guys shows. Yeah, I love them. The Grand National Roadster Show was just this past weekend, and I watched a lot of it through FaceTime with a couple of my friends. And the Steve Mole car was there, the new Steve Mole car, and so he got selected at a top 10 and didn't win the Grand National, but yet he was in the top 10. So I love that stuff, and I love lowriders. I love going and looking at these lowriders and seeing all the work and the passion these guys have for the lowrider. I'd love to own one of those someday, But there's so many different ways of looking at automobiles: hot rods, lowriders, classic cars, brass cars. I mean, there's so many opportunities for people to get involved in the hobby and get the same passion that we all have. Hopefully, we rub off on a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd say. And what's really interesting too is I used to think 60s cars were vintage cars, right?
Yeah.
You go back to a teens car or a 20s car where you're manually adjusting spark and timing, and it's way up on 30-inch wheels. I mean, that's a really different feeling.
I like cars that are challenging, that you have to think about when you're starting it, when you're driving it. I don't necessarily want to listen to the radio. I mean, sometimes I do, but I like that, being able to think every minute that you're driving it. I have a 26 Bentley, and that opportunity to think about how the car operates, and you have to be very knowledgeable about what's in front of you down the road, because that car's not going to stop at the same rate as a modern car. So if you're going 50, 60 miles an hour down the road and all of a sudden traffic stops in front of you, you have to leave enough space in between for you to be able to stop. And then if all else fails, there's that big brake handle on the outside. You lock the rear brakes up and you pray. That's all. But that's what's so cool about cars, is that it gets you involved, and I think that if you're not involved every second that you're driving, you're not experiencing everything cars have to give you.
All right, we have a question specifically about BMWs, later model BMWs, E46s. Do you think those are something that might be collectible in the future? People should be taking a look at those?
Well, I mean, really look at low production cars, and that's what I always tell people. So the Z8, I think, is a fabulous car, low production, really great looking. An M3, who would ever know that when they came out they would become so collectible? But they're such good driving cars, And I think what you have to do is look to the past. So, for instance, the 1600 BMW was a really great car, and then the 2002 became even a greater car. And then all of a sudden, the E36 came out, and what a car that was. So I think as time goes on, if you look at the past, it'll tell you what the future is going to bring you. And it's that passion BMW has for motorsports that really comes out in every car they build. So yeah, I think that's going to be a collectible. But really look at the numbers and try to find the best one you can if you're buying one.
We have a good question on the autonomous cars and the future of that, and how, Hagerty's talked about that, written a lot of articles about it, and done town halls on it. Is there still going to be a place for collectible cars like these in the future?
Well, that's what's so good about Hagerty and all the other organizations, is we're all trying to make sure that continues to happen. And get young people involved. There's a Hagerty driving experience that we get young people involved and trying to teach them how to drive standard shift cars, which is a great thing. We need to do that because let's say that 20 years from now that I'm gone, but my grandson was never taught how to drive a standard shift, and I leave him all my cars. Well, he's not going to want them because he can't use them. And it's tough to teach someone later in life how to use a clutch, and because you go, I don't need that. What do I need that for? But there's so many things like that, car clubs, and autonomous cars are going to have a place, that's for sure. Just think of handicapped people and being able to call a car up,
Sure.
that you can be yourself and you can get in it and tell that car where you want to go, that means of transportation, and it takes you there, and your independence is going to be so much better than being able to rely on people to call somebody and they have to come and wheel you in your wheelchair or whatever. These cars are going to be such great things for handicapped people. It's going to be wonderful. And there's a lot of people that would rather be on their laptops doing work and having phone calls and that stuff instead of driving. And that's a problem that we have right now is cell phones in a car.
Sure.
It distracts you. And so because of that, the car would be able to take you where you want to go, and you'll have no distractions other than what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sit in the car and read a book. I mean, it's amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's going to have a place. I don't think it's ever going to take over the world of collecting cars, though.
Yeah. I think if you probably want to take an old car and drive out into the Mojave Desert on some old roads, there's not going to be a lot of autonomous vehicles out there taking people point A to point B to work.
No, autonomous vehicles will be in cities first, big cities, spread out cities too, like Los Angeles, Houston, big cities like that create a lot of land mass. No, pods will also be in, you see Lyft and Uber possibly being a means of transportation with these pods in New York City within 10 years. Where a certain area of the city won't allow vehicles in it. So these are all things that are coming in the future.
So we had a question about Brooklyn's, and we answered it briefly as a text as we were sorting out our satellite issues. But that's a wild car.
Brooklyn
right?
is a cool car. My friend Tom had one years ago, and I thought it was always cool then. The only negative part was the bumpers, but it was supposed to be a safety car. I think it had a great look to it, with the gull-wing doors, and it was lightweight with a fiberglass body, very much like a DeLorean. And I think that those cars, if you find a well-preserved one, very original, is going to be a good investment because they're fairly inexpensive right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I see that age group becoming more and more involved with cars, and that might be a good collector car to have.
Well, we've seen an explosion in interest in Malaise era to forward vehicles.
Yeah,
the
that's for
interest
sure.
in these things is out of this world.
Yeah.
And I think that could certainly fall into that category of cars that weren't shown under the best light when they were new.
Who would think that in the late 70s, early 80s cars, and they became bigger bumpers and heavier and less horsepower, but they've become very collectible because young people, as they were growing up, that was their cars of their dreams at that period of time, and now they've become older, they've a little older, and they've been able to purchase one. They have the financial means to purchase one. And I think it's great, that they become collectible.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain cars that won't be, but like I say, a first-time collector always buy something that's a little weird and unique. A Chevette, whatever it may be.
Hey, try and find a clean Chevette.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah.
A twin-cam Vega. Nobody wanted them 10 years ago, and suddenly they're the rage. And I think a fabulous car.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of the Cosworth engine in the car, just things like that, unusual cars, I think will become very collectible and are today.
We judge together every year at Concord of Lemons.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
In Monterey, I think.
And there's so much fun.
There's a Cosworth Vega Club.
There is.
And they bring like 10 of these things, and they have them out there.
I think that they bring more to the Michigan Lemons show that we have at Concord of America.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year there had to be 7 or 8 of them there. So I just think that they're a cool car. Vega itself, in that period of time, it was a little questionable. Cars weren't really great. They weren't built like they are today. Or the 60s were great. 70s were great. And then in the 80s, everything turned around to gas, savings, making them safer, and they became less attractive, I guess you could say. Where cars today are just, there's no bad car on the road today. Some cars are better than others, but actually there's no bad cars on the road today. I'm part of the New England Motor Press Association, and I test drive cars every week, and boy, I tell you, the new cars are spectacular.
So there's no more of this cars built on a Monday or a Friday you want to avoid. They're all pretty good these days.
They're pretty good these days, and the people that build them are very talented. The people that design them are talented. The robots are fantastic. What's happening, with computerized robots within the assembly plants. So I think that their cars today are fabulous.
You've seen Ford, GM. They're not making sedans like they were. They're all going to crossovers and SUVs and things. Yeah. Do you think that trend will bubble back the other direction in a while?
It might. It's all about moving the amount of people. So, for instance, in our family, we have an autistic daughter, and she travels everywhere with us, and my mother-in-law now lives with us, and so she's with us all the time, and our grandson. So we had to find something that fit our family. And so we just recently bought a Volkswagen Atlas. It's working fabulous. I love the car. Able to get everybody in comfortably, and we were sort of a Volkswagen Audi family anyway, so it fit us perfectly. But going back to a sedan, what I asked my wife before we bought this, would you like to have a car? And we had a Tesla, and she just didn't like riding it because it was low to the ground. She wants to sit up higher. So there's different reasons in different cars, but I think that the SUV market is certainly taken off, and that all might change. I mean, gasoline is very plentiful, prices are low. We see these big SUVs driving around, but what happens when gasoline someday gets to $6 and $7 a gallon?
Right.
What's going to happen at that point? We're going to go back to maybe building sedans again, lightweight cars without all the four-wheel drive aspects, and going in reverse a little bit. But Ford still makes great cars. That little Focus ST.
Sure.
Fabulous car. Little drive. I mean, and that's what it's all about, the driving experience.
So in your vintage cars, of your personal cars, what's your go-to? It's a nice sunny day. You're going to get out there and blow the cobwebs out. What do you like?
Boy, I really think that probably the Allard J2X is a good choice. My Mole Hot Rod, I just love driving that. I was out with Steve last year, but I got the car back now. I love driving in my 49 Chevy pickup truck, my Restomod pickup truck.
That was a different one to me when I saw that car sitting there.
It doesn't fit. Everybody says that. It doesn't fit you as being a classic car guy, but it's all in the driving experience. That car was traded into me by a guy who was buying a Ferrari from us, and I was going to bring it to Mecum Auction and sell it, and then I drove it. I made that mistake of driving it one night to visit my parents, and I fell in love with it. It was great. So. And now I think that 8 years later, I still own it, and there's a reason. It's one of those cars that it's a different experience driving it. It's got a Kenny Bell supercharger in it. It goes like heck. And I like the aspect of pulling up somewhere and just dropping it right on the ground. I've got a DS21 Citroen also.
Sure.
And I love that because young people today, they freak out about it when they see it. We went to buy a new cell phone for my mother-in-law, and I took her in that. We pulled up in front of the phone store, and all the guys were standing in the window, and I pulled up and I dropped it right on the ground, and they all came out there going crazy. What kind of car is this? And of course, one of the most comfortable cars in the world is a Citroen.
I love that, and that little narrow steering wheel with the single
Isn't that great?
Spoke at the bottom. They're so unique.
Yeah, unique and unusual cars are something that I've always loved.
So we've got a question also. Car you may have gotten rid of in the past that you now regret?
Oh man, there's a lot of those. The Stutz Bearcat, I certainly regret selling that, but yeah, the timing and the ability to be able to drive it, that was something that weighed heavily on my mind when I did it. But I did it in the spur of the moment. We almost got in a severe accident with the car. I was absolutely shaking when I got back to the barn to put it in the barn, and I made my mind up that second that was time to sell that car, that it would never be the same to me. And I called one of my friends at the auction house, and I said, I'm selling the Stutz, and I'd like you to handle it for me. So things like that, spur of the moment, when you make that decision. I sold a motorcycle the other day in Las Vegas, and as I looked at it up on the stage, I go, man, why am I selling that motorcycle? It's so cool. But, on to another one, I guess. So you can't have every car in the world, and that's another thing, is I'd love to have every car and keep them all, but you run out of money and you run out of space. So sometimes they must go. And it's exciting changing cars around and getting something new and interesting. So.
Well, the whole business is built on people's new whims. They want to try a different experience.
That's right. Yeah, and that ability to have that. I'm very, very fortunate to be in the car business and have the ability to buy and sell and trade cars around and have a different car to drive on a constant basis. So we have our core collection, and then there's 4 or 5 cars that always sort of turn around and we get new ones in their place. So yeah, it's fun. It makes it interesting.
So you've been buying cars, selling cars, restoring cars, TV show about this whole process.
Right.
What else is on your personal bucket list of what else you want to do with your life? Is there something else out there you want to do?
We were very fortunate to buy a farm about 4.5 years ago. It's a 30-acre farm that basically was a horse farm. We've replaced the horse barn with all my car and motorcycle collection, built a new house on the property, and the next venture is Carini Vineyards. So we're going to plant about 10 acres of grapes. We're going to have a winemaking facility there, and we're going to make our own wine. Not for sale to the general public. It's going to be just for charity events. We're going to have small charity events at our facility there, and just pour wine for people and have them donate money to different charities. And then the next thing is this summer we're building a go-kart track and one of the riding rinks that was on the farm.
Okay.
And it's going to be a figure 8 with a banked corner and then a little hairpin at the end. And we're going to make a little road course, and hopefully my grandson will really become involved with that. He's so into cars and trucks and tractors and stuff. Some of the greatest fun we have right now is I've recently bought a skid steer, and he just loves going with me and digging dirt up and putting it at one pile, and then we take it from that pile and we put it back in this one. Just the experience of being on a piece of equipment like that. So there's different ways. There's not only cars that turn me on. I love equipment, backhoes and skid steers and all that kind of stuff, and I love mowing my lawn. We have big fields, and I love mowing the grass. So just anything with something in motion, I think.
Well, and this is very true, because when we got here this morning, obviously it's cold. It's 21 degrees outside or something, and got here a few minutes before Wayne did this morning. Wayne pulled up in a pickup truck with a plow on the front.
Yeah, I went out plowing. I had to clear the driveways and go sanding. So I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning doing all that, and that's what we do around in New England. You got to be prepared. And make sure that everyone can get in and out. I come down to the shop, I plowed, I sanded our parking lot, went back home and did the same thing so my wife could go to work and our daughter could get picked up. So you have all these little chores to do. Fortunately, I was home this time, but we have backup people to do that when I'm on the road.
Now, another thing I saw this morning was that little go-kart.
Yeah.
Twin engine go-kart, dual chains on it,
Yeah.
and I think your wife you said you bought it for your
So when I was 13 or 14, I used to race my cousin's go-kart at a go-kart facility, and there was a guy that showed up with a twin engine McCullough twin engine go-kart. I think it was a Rupp, and I always wanted one of those as a kid. So a couple of years ago we were out at a worldwide auction out in Scottsdale, and there was a twin engine go-kart towed by a little mini bike, and I stayed around and hung out for the auction. It was a charity auction, and I bought it. And so I sent a picture home to my wife, and she says, "Why'd you buy that?" I said, "Well, I bought it for Connor." And she said, "Quit using that kid as your crutch. We know who it's for." So Connor, recently we did an article in Hagerty magazine, and it was about excuses. So you have to have a reason. You have to have some excuse to buy. Why'd you buy it? Well, Connor's the newest tool in my toolbox of excuses. It's because I didn't have one, because I've always wanted one, and that gets old after a while. So I have to fess up every time to my wife. Why did you buy that car? So Connor's the person I blame now. Well, it's for Connor. That's all.
I can't wait to see this figure 8 go-kart track.
Figure 8 go-kart track, with a hairpin and a banked far end corner. We live in an area. Joey Logano grew up in our town here.
Oh, cool.
And so I watched Joey's progression into being the NASCAR champion this year.
Sure.
From when he was 6 years old, driving go-karts and then getting into midgets and all the succession of his life. And I don't expect my grandson to be like Joey Logano, but I think that it's a great bonding thing, and that's our latest article too in Hagerty Collector Car Magazine, is that bond that cars bring to people and families and guys and their fathers and guys and their grandfathers and families with their grandfathers. Look at Ralph Morano's the perfect example. My buddy Ralph. He takes his whole family to car shows, and the kids enjoy going with him. But he just doesn't say, "Okay, we're going to sit at this car all day. What do you want? You want to go to the swimming pool today? We'll go to the swimming pool." But he makes sure the cars are involved in their lives, and it's been a blessing to him with his sons and now his grandchildren too.
That's great.
Yeah, it's that bond. It's that one thing that sort of ties you all together.
All right, and let's see. I had a great question. This is a car I love. 928 Porsches.
Yeah, 928 Porsches are really cool. Standard shifts, of course, are the thing right now, but the S2's a really fabulous car. There's a blue one that I've been after in a collection with very low mileage that I'd love to have. I just think it's a great looking car. Of course, everybody said it looked like an AMC Pacer when they came out, but a little more streamlined than an AMC Pacer because of that bubble and all the glass. I just think a really great collectible. If a person has a Porsche collection, I think a 928's a must.
There's in the town I live in Maryland, there's one that's been parked on the side of the road with a for sale sign on it.
Oh, wow.
And I will guarantee that it would bury me alive to try and restore it or even get it running. But every time I go by the thing, I'm like, oh man, I gotta have that car.
It's one of those things that you say, you want to help it out.
Sure.
You're going to save it from destruction. So that's sometimes the reason for doing these things. Dick McClure, a buddy of mine in California, that's the premise around his collection is I saved another one, and Dick will buy anything and restore it, and just because he felt bad that somebody else would leave it behind. So, and then of course he brings them all to the Quail and then to Concordia Lemons, and it's a lot of fun.
We were in a rally with him, and he went swimming in one of his cars.
He did. He forgot to set his parking brake on his Boxster. He bought
Sorry, Dick.
He bought his Boxster because his wife wanted to go on this rally, but she wanted air conditioning. And he found a cheap Boxster online, bought it, was doing the rally, had set up a photograph next to a lake, at the boat ramp on a lake, because all the foliage was in the background. And so he backed his car in first and got out and guided everybody in so that they could take a group shot. And all of a sudden he looked, and his car was going into the lake. He forgot to set the parking brake. Yeah. And he dove in after it, and after 3 or 4 dives, they finally had to get the tow truck and pull it up. But he was actually trying to hold it up so it wouldn't sink, Dick, it's a little heavy. I think it's going to sink no matter what you do.
It was cold.
Yeah,
we were out by Lake Tahoe,
yes,
somewhere around there. Yeah. It was chilly.
Yeah. There's been a couple of cars. Ralph lost one to a lake too. So.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And there's a Bugatti Veyron, I think, that keeps popping back up for sale.
That
also
one's
sank.
Swimming also.
Yeah.
We need floaties on these things, like kids to have in the swimming pool when they're first learning how to swim. Instead of airbags inside, we get them on the outside so they pop open when it meets water.
Now, one car I didn't see in any of the buildings that I was in. Amphicars. What do you think of Amphicars?
I like Amphicars.
Yeah.
I've owned one. Somebody else had to have it worse than I when I had it. I just think it's a cool little car, especially if you live on a small lake or a small body of water. It's kind of cool to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
And a wonderful piece of conversation, I guess you could say. I get a little afraid though when I get in the water in one, and the water's up to the door handle, as we're going on.
Yeah, there's not a lot of freeboard in this.
No, there's not. So. But really cool car. I mean, a great concept. Flying cars, water cars. It all depends on what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But technology back then was not the greatest, so it had this little propeller. And how does it steer? Well, you steer the steering wheel. The rubber tires guide you. You're not going to turn
great
that thing
turning
on a dime.
radius.
That's right.
So we had a question Ever meet a car you couldn't get started? Did one of them just really just couldn't get there?
You know, it's the electronics on cars today. Cars are very simple. So if you look at it logically, and you got gas, you got spark, and you got compression, it's going to run. So you follow those things, you make sure you have all those elements, and it'll run. Today, though, you know, the check engine light comes on in the car. You don't have certain things lined up properly. It's not going to run. It gets a little frustrating that you have to plug a computer in and find out what's wrong with it. But back in the day, there hasn't been too many cars. My father used to go out and hunt for Model A's, and part of his sales pitch to buy the car is that if I get this thing running in 10 minutes, will you sell me the car? And the people go, oh, you'll never get it running in 10 minutes. What are you, out of your mind? That'll take weeks to do that. And basically, we had a can of gas with us at all times, and he'd put the gasoline can on the cowl and put fresh gas down to the carburetor. He'd take the carb off real quick and clean it all up, file the points, and bring a battery and pop a battery in it, and usually within 5 minutes the car was running. So we bought a lot of cars that way on bets that it wouldn't run.
We could have used you at our last swap to street thing at Hershey, where we built a Model A out in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. There's such things, and we won't name names, but if you put diesel fuel in a gasoline-powered car, it's a little rough just to make them run. So the person hopefully is watching this video and knows who I'm talking about. But that was something. You don't allow somebody to put fuel in the car that doesn't know which hose goes in what tank. That's all.
So how do you keep track? I mean, your interest is so varied on modern cars, vintage cars, European, American. You just have it all up here?
Yeah, that's just it. You know, you keep all the stuff in order. My wife wanted to know one night how many cars we had and where they all were. Mm-hmm. You know, and I kept putting her off. So we went to a restaurant one night, and coffee comes to the table. She puts a blank piece of paper on the table, and she says, "Write them all down, or I'm not leaving." And sort of pushed me into the position of, you know, oops, I guess I've got to finally do this, or otherwise they're going to close the restaurant. We'll still be sitting here.
Sure.
And so I did that. And on the way home, I said, oh, geez, I forgot about that Ferrari. She said, how can you forget about a Ferrari? Well, I sent it to a friend of mine's shop to get a belt service done, and it was there for about 6 years. And I sort of forgot that I owned it. Not really, but I mean, you know, it wasn't number one on my mind. But during that period of time, it increased in value. So I said, "Look, it was just cheap storage. It's not a problem."
Exactly.
You know. So it's always good to have all that stuff, and I share. My older daughter's in charge of our collection, so I rely on her. And we have a certain amount of cars in a trust for my autistic daughter, mm-hmm. and so my older daughter's in charge of that. But you know, when all this fun is done for me, there's 2 words I tell her to use, and that's no reserve. Just sell them. Sell them, and don't worry about what I paid for them. Don't worry about what somebody tells you it's worth, or take it to auction. The auction will figure out, the people in the audience will figure out how much the cars are worth. Not that we want to give any away, mm-hmm. But, you know, she says, you know, don't you want to worry about what I get for them? Maybe you should tell me how much you paid for it. And I said, it would drive you crazy. It would make you worry so much. So I always tell people say, are you going to, is it going to cost me something to own this car? And I said, count on it. Do you go to the movies and pay for your ticket, and when you leave the movie, do they give you your money back? There's a cost to having fun and doing different things. So that's the way I look at it anyways.
It's good.
Yeah.
We've had several people that have made comments about your generosity toward children's charities and your work with autism. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, so my daughter has autism, and I'm thrilled to be able to help different organizations around the country. I go and give talks, and I give the money. So if I charge someone to go give a speech somewhere, I get a speaking fee. I donate to whatever local autism organization is in that area. So the ability to be able to do that, and then to promote different things, the Barry Levinson car, the Rain Man car, I'm able to take around the country and show it and promote the awareness of autism. And then there's so many other cancer charities that I get involved with, and And our local children's hospital here, we have great car shows, and we donate all the money to their thing. And that particular show is really great because we take the children that are in the children's hospital and we put them in cars, in the Ferraris, and we drive them around with a big parade with a police escort, and they get that opportunity. And it's something to see these people that own these cars, and as they drive up to the reviewing stand, and the child gets out of the car, and you picture, and the guy's in there, and the big alligator tears are coming down because he knows that it's a possibility that that child won't be there next year to do that with him again. So it really affects that giving part. It's so important to give back, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that in many different ways.
Sure. Well, and I think that shows some of the depth of you. You're a kind of a beloved national treasure, practically, with your impact through chasing classic cars. But you look around in your trophy case here at your office, there's a lot of stuff from local Connecticut shows, Chamber of Commerce, things like that. So I think it's interesting how you're able to keep your impact in your local community where you got started,
Mm-hmm.
as well as have this outreach all over the country and over the world. It's a testament to how hard you must work.
Well,
at
we
it.
just love helping people and helping different charities and different organizations, and you can have all the stuff in the world, all the cars in the world, and all the money in the world, but if you don't have that good feeling, if you go to bed and don't feel accomplished, I can't sleep right, so I want to accomplish things during the course of the day and know that I made people's lives better every day that I'm around. So if you go in with that strategy and tell the truth, my father really instilled that in me, of be truthful, always be truthful, no matter what.
Sure.
And that got me through life pretty well. So there's things that your dad sometimes says to you, and when you're a kid, you go, oh yeah, right, But if you keep that in the back of your brain every day that you're living, that all those little things that they pass down to you, it makes you a better person.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
We've been able to go over some time because of the technical issues we had on the front end. I think we can do a couple more questions. We had a great one about tractors, because you said that you mentioned you like your skid steers and stuff like that. What do you think about the collectible tractor market?
I think it's wonderful. We have two Fords. We have an 8N and a 9N on the farm. And to tell you the truth, that's the first tractor my grandson always wants to ride on. So wants to ride on the old tractor without all the enclosures. We have glass cabs and all these tractors now. I think it's a wonderful thing what Mecum is doing. With selling tractors, at these auctions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lady, Diane, out in Michigan that just retired from running the Concours of America.
Oh yeah.
And Diane had an unbelievable tractor collection, and so some of these Modine tractors with the cabs, so tractors were made so that you could go work in the field.
Sure.
And then drive into town to get your groceries and go to the movies or whatever. It was
orchard tractors.
Orchard tractors
Yeah.
are absolutely beautiful, the body work on them and stuff. So I love tractors, and that's how I was brought up. So I was brought up on a fruit farm, and the first vehicle that I actually drove was a tractor. It was probably 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
And they saw that I could do it. And I was the new tractor driver because you're cheap labor. We don't have to hire somebody. We'll just feed you a little more. And so I got to drive the tractors up in the orchards, working with all the guys picking the fruit. And so I've always loved tractors because of that. And then when I went to college in Idaho, I actually drove a potato combine machine because they found out I could actually drive a tractor, and they said, "You're hired." I worked in the factory cleaning the machines, and then they found out I could drive a tractor, and they popped me out in one of those things, and it's always a wonderful experience driving things that you've never had the opportunity to drive before. So, and you can always figure it out.
Well, and that will take us to our last question.
Okay.
What else is out there that you haven't had the chance to drive yet that you gotta drive?
I don't know. I think a real Formula One car would be very exciting, or an Indy car. So that's a car that's on my list, a rear engine V8 or something like that, either a Formula One car or an Indy car. Of course, a Gurney Eagle would be the utmost car to me,
Sure.
to have a shark nose Gurney Eagle. That probably won't happen, but just want to have that experience. I took Skip Barber School racing courses and have driven Formula B cars and open wheel cars like that. But I think that's one thing. And people always ask me, what's your favorite car in your collection? It's the next one. That's my favorite.
That is eternal optimism right
That's
there.
right. That's right.
Well, now we all have a mission. Let's get Wayne into a Gurney Eagle.
Yeah.
Come on, they're everywhere. There's got to be 10 of them we passed on the way to Dunkin' Donuts.
Well,
this
Dan
morning.
Gurney was a huge hero of mine. I love that guy. What a thrill it was to meet him. There's so many great people I've met over the years in the car industry, and I can't wait to meet the next group of people. And that's what's great about going to all these cars events, that you get to do that and talk to them and hear their stories, and it's really cool.
Well, Wayne, we have certainly enjoyed hearing your stories today. We've had a lot of great questions. We didn't get to all of them. We'll be able to go through them. We'll try and answer some more offline a little bit on the stream.
I'm sorry
perhaps.
we got started late, but those things happen. Technical difficulties.
It is a testament to your versatility and the fact that believe me, everyone. We have some people here that were all working furiously on finding another satellite and figuring out what was going on. So thanks to you guys for doing that, and we're going to continue on with our day. You guys have watched this because you're members of the Hagerty Drivers Club, and we appreciate you coming along with us. We're going to be doing a lot of content like this with Wayne and with others, kind of a behind-the-scenes view of different personalities in the collector car hobby, and we hope you continue to enjoy them.
Maybe this summer or in the fall we can take everybody for rides in some of the cars. So we'll put some cameras on some of the cars, and we can go up to my collection and take some of the cars out for rides, and that driving experience we can share with other people.
I think that'd be great. We'll be all GoPro'd up.
Yes.
And then we'll be tricked into stomping grapes in a vat of.
That's right. You have to work for your.
That's right.
For being with me.
Fair enough. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Brad.
Appreciate it very much.
Okay. See you
All right.
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.